Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says India China hold talks agree to resolve differences peacefully. India and China have witnessed tensions along the line of actual control. This has led to war of words and skirmishes in the Ladakh region. To prevent any further escalation and also to settle key differences between these two countries, foreign ministries have agreed to build upon a consensus. What is this consensus? According to India's external ministry, both sides agreed to handle differences through peaceful discussion, bearing in mind the importance of respecting each other's sensitivity, concerns, aspirations, and not allow them to turn into disputes. And at the same time, the Chinese ministry has also said both sides agreed to implement the consensus that two countries do not constitute a threat to each other and not let key differences rise into dispute. So both these countries have come into a consensus that this particular threat should not become into a dispute between India and China. These countries also enter into another consensus, that is because of the COVID-19. The COVID-19 has created a devastation across the world and it has taken away many lives across the world. So if we have to fight a war, it has to be against the COVID-19 and not against the people. So the peace, the stability and balanced relationship that both the countries will require is to promote stability in the current global scenario. So what they have accomplished with this particular ministerial talks is that this threat should not enter into a mode of dispute. Now the military leaders will also meet to ensure that there is a framework to de-escalate the tension along the disputed border between the two nations. What is that the Indian military side would want to speak about? They would want to speak about restoration of the status quo. What is the status quo here? We are speaking about the line of the actual control. The Chinese soldiers had transgressed or entered into an area of Indian territory. So what would the Indian military speakers speak about? They would ask the Chinese military officers to pull back their soldiers and also ensure status quo as before the month of May. In this particular backdrop, it is not only the military framework that is required, but political will and diplomatic interventions is very important to prevent any escalation is what is the crux of this article. Kindly note, we will have an elaborate analysis of this particular military framework tomorrow. Why? Because there is a framework discussion today that would be happening between the military leaders of both India and China. Now let's look into the next article. This issue here is speaking about medical journals. There are two important articles here we have picked up for the same issue of medical journals. Lancet happens to be one of the important and influential medical journals of the world. It had recently conducted a study on hydroxychloroquine. According to this study by the medical journal, they came up with a particular conclusion. What was the conclusion? It found that there was no benefit from the use of this hydroxychloroquine. When hydroxychloroquine was given to all those patients who were suffering from COVID-19, they derived no benefits from it, and in fact, after it was administered to the patients, it has resulted in high mortality rate. So what did they say? They said that when this particular anti-malarial drug was given to the patients, such patients whom it was administered to suffered from death and mortality when it was administered to such patients. To this particular argument, the World Health Organization's Data Safety Committee has also found that there was no evidence with respect to higher mortality. In fact, clinical trials have been conducted with respect to the beneficial use of hydroxychloroquine. With this, the World Health Organization has put to rest the claim that hydroxychloroquine will cause deaths to the COVID-19 positive patients. While all this was happening, when the studies came out in the public forum, researchers and scientific community started questioning the methodology. What was the methodology that we are speaking about? Where did you get this data from? How did Lancet procure this particular data? Even if you have taken the data, who are the patients that you have taken it from? Where the patients in the hospital? What is the source of the hospital? Which are the hospitals that you have considered? Even even if there are deaths with respect to the hospital which you have taken from the country of Australia, the number of deaths that you are claiming in the Lancet journal is totally different from what country of Australia is claiming. So the numbers that you are saying in your Lancet journal and the numbers that are given in the official channel books of Australia is totally different. So it questions the methodology and how they have sourced their patient record and the mortality attributed, which is totally different from that which is present in the journal and that which is present in the official channel books of the Australian government. It further says that you, the journal, have sourced your information from Sergesphere Corporation, but this corporation does not have scientific expertise who would be able to check whether the information is right or wrong. So how can we believe this particular journal and its article that you have put out in the public forum is what the researchers and the scientific community have been questioning. This is where the Lancet and another organization, that is the New England Journal of Medicine, have retracted their studies. So why have they retracted? Because there have been lacunae with respect to all these issues and because they were not able to give statistical evidences and due experimentational evidences and certain research protocols. That is why these two journals have taken back their studies. What can we learn from this debacle? Are we sure that all the results that are given by these journals legitimate? Are they not getting influenced by the pharmaceutical companies, or are there any industrial lobbies which is pushing in an agenda? Let's draw the inference from this particular article. The key lesson is that the mistake to assume the scientific process has always diverged from the influence of power, privilege, finance and politics. What do we mean by it? Let's say for example there is a company. This particular company wants to push its particular product, so it pays this medical journal to put out a positive viewpoint about this particular drug or about this product. So what happens here? Medical journals have a close financial conflict of interest, particularly in relationship with all those pharmaceutical companies. Some journals have been even captured by the pharmaceutical companies that they have come to depend on these pharmaceutical companies. Many, including some of the prestigious journals, publish most trials because of the funding that they require from the industrial bodies. So the first key thing is influence that these companies draw with respect to the medical journals. This times down to the means and methods. In the present scenario, they came out with a study. They came out with the statistics as well. How did you draw this particular statistics? How did you get to a particular conclusion? We should not always look at the result, but instead we should focus on how did they get this particular information. So you have taken this particular information from a particular company. Is it a legitimate company? Do they have the expertise to conduct these experimentations? All this will have to be tested. So the means and methods to collect and collute this particular information is very important, and the global scrutiny of this particular method will also have to be taken. But here we should not only focus on the end point, that is the results, but we should also focus how this particular information is derived from a process. This ultimately leads to people losing their confidence and undermining the confidence in these medical journals, which means that all the good work that they have done in the past will completely go void, and in the near future doctors, scientific people, researchers and in fact people who would want to read such medical journals will not trust these medical journals. This gives rise to couple of concerns as well. What are these concerns? This can ultimately influence how doctors treat the patients and the actions taken by the public authorities. Let's say for example this is one of the trusted journals. Now it comes up with a particular argument that hydroxychloroquine, when it is administered to the COVID-19, leads to mortality. So what would happen here? The doctors and the public authorities world over will immediately stop administering hydroxychloroquine to the patients. So who are the major sufferers? The major sufferers are the people. The major sufferers are the persons who have been administered with this particular drug. So unfortunately, this could cause a scare among the public, and genuine treatment may be asked to be withdrawn because of this particular study or research put out by this journal. Then what we have is called as peer review. So what is this peer review? Say Lancet in this particular case, it has given out a particular study, it has given out certain information with respect to an infection. So what I do, I ask another friend or an organization to review this whole process, to review this whole study. Only after the other organization or another individual says that this particular study is right and has a global scrutiny on it with respect to a particular organization, that is when this has to be put out in the open forum. Now what we see is the peer review with respect to Lancet was not taken, and even in the past there have been scenarios where this particular peer review has been very slow, expensive, ineffective, prone to bias and abuse, and this has also resulted in errors and fraud as well. So what we require in the near future is proper analysis, global scrutiny and proper peer review such that this issue does not persist in the near future. So much more needs to be done to improve the ethical accountability of all the editors and journals in the near future is what is the crux of this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about Health Impact Fund. Coronavirus has shed dark clouds on the activities of us, the humans. It has caged us in our homes and stripped us all of our freedom. There is suffering, there is pain, there is grief and agony. Patients who are infected, their families and friends are anxious. The poor are the major sufferers. Their stomachs go empty, hands have no work, resulting in misery, choking and suffocation ultimately. What is the solution to this hard fought problem? The answer to this is medicines and vaccines. Let us look at some of the statistics to understand the magnitude of the pharmaceutical industry. The global market for pharmaceuticals is currently worth 1.7% of the gross world product. Roughly about 55% of this global pharmaceutical spending is for the brand name products which are typically under patent. What do we mean by this? According to this statistics, about 1.7% of the global money that is circulating in the market is present in the pharmaceutical company. In that, let's say there is an investment of about 100 rupees by the pharmaceutical company. In that, about 55 rupees goes in brand marketing. What is brand marketing here? Let's suppose there is a company like Himalaya. Himalaya has a sanitizer. So this is a product of Himalaya. So what they basically do is Himalaya starts pushing this particular product or the sanitizer or multiple other products into the market. So about 55 rupees from 100 rupees of investment will be based for the brand marketing. So what this article says is that about 1.7% of the total money that is present in the world economy is present in the pharmaceutical industry. For every 100 rupees in the hypothetical numbers that they have invested, 55 rupees goes in building this brand market, that is about their product as well as about the company. Now we have understood some of the important statistics as given under this article. Now the question is, how do the pharmaceutical companies earn their revenue and their profits? Before that, we have to understand what are the company's cost. When it comes to the investment of a company, they picture their money for the R&D. So most of the companies that are investing their money spend on the research and developmental sector. They have to find out what is the root cause of that infection or that particular disease, for which research needs to be conducted, development of a product needs to be conducted. They have to pay to the scientific personnel and doctors as well. So the most important factor for the company spending is with respect to the research and development. Followed by this, what they have to accomplish is the clinical trial. What is the clinical trial? Now research and development has been done. They have come up with a particular medication. Whether this medication that they have come up with, is it working in an efficient manner? Are there any side effects? So these clinical trials will be conducted on the animals, and this can also be conducted on the humans after getting due consent from that particular patient. So clinical trials to test the efficacy of the drug because of the R&D will be taken up. Then they also have to invest on the capital tied up as well. What do we mean by it? Let's say for example they have to hire people, so they require a building, they require the equipment, they also will have to pay rents to that particular building as well. So they have invested capital for the infrastructure, for the maintenance of it, and also for multiple equipments. So they have invested money for the capital of the infrastructure. Followed by this, in case they have conducted a particular experimentation, this experimentation currently did not go right and it has failed unfortunately, so such cost will also be added for developing a particular product. So let's say if the particular product is costing about 100 rupees, this 100 rupees will take the cost of the R&D, it will take the cost of clinical trial, it will take the cost of capital tied up and the research that has failed as well. So when they are releasing a particular product, what this means is all the costs that this particular investor has invested will be put up on that particular product, and the same shall be extracted from the consumer. So what would happen? How would they generate money now? So the minute they have found out a particular medicine for a particular infection or a disease, they will release immediately into the market. So what happens when they release into the market? So according to it, when they release a particular drug into a market, they'll start selling it. So they will get about 20 years of patenting rights. So what happens? Other companies will not be able to reverse engineer it, or they may not be able to duplicate this particular drug, and that company which has found out this particular medicine would get a patented rights for about 20 years. So they would be able to sell this particular drug in the market at the price that they want to, so that they can make profits. Now we have understood how companies invest their money, how they take back profits from the consumers. But the problem is, why is that the companies don't invest on all types of infections and diseases? What are the concerns with respect to the research and development and also investments made by the private officials? The answer to this are multiple. Let's take some of the neglected diseases. There are some of the neglected diseases like tuberculosis. These are called as poor man's disease. The individuals, the private organizations do not invest, or they do not come up with R&D with respect to all these neglected diseases. Why? Because they would not be able to generate the profits. The whole motive of the private individuals are profit. This is where they invest on those type of medicines, those type of infections where they are able to generate profit, and not the ones which are completely neglected or which is called as the poor man's disease. One such example is with respect to the tuberculosis. According to the World Health Organization, there are about 20 neglected tropical diseases together afflict over 1 billion people, but attract only 0.35% of the pharmaceutical industry's research and development. Why? They do not invest because they do not get the profit, because it is a poor man's disease. He would not be able to buy that particular drug or the product. That is the primary reason investment goes only into those medicines where the rich are able to buy it. Let's suppose they want to invest money with respect to research and development for the neglected disease, but then the price of this particular drug or the medicine will be so high that poor people would not be able to afford it. Even millions and millions die from the lack of access to the medicine, as we initially discussed, and they also die because they cannot afford it. And third is the question of the healing value. What also happens is pharmaceutical companies and the industrial lobbying groups have a close coordination with the hospitals and also with the doctors as well. So what they do is they promote their particular drug and their product. Their efficiency may not be tested as well, that might not have healing value as well, and even if there is healing value, the efficiency with respect to that particular disease has comparatively reduced over a period of time. So all this means that there is a lobbying group which is influencing that particular doctor, that particular hospital, and they are making lot of profits eventually, which means the sufferers are the poor people. This needs some solution. This needs some practical exposure to alternatives as well. One such alternative that we are discussing is what is called as Health Impact Fund. What is this Health Impact Fund? Let's say there is a particular private company. This private company's ultimate motive is about profit making. So they invest in only those type of diseases and derive medicines for it. Why? Because their ultimate motive is profit. So they are neglecting the neglected diseases of the poor as well. That is where this picture of health impact fund steps in. What is the whole process or the funding of this health impact fund? According to it, what we will have is the funding from the government. The governments of that particular nation will start investing in a particular fund. So there will be multiple governments across the world. So what we will have is one central fund. Governments will start infusing money into this particular fund, and the same fund will be eventually used to contribute for the private investors. Let me simplify this whole process for you. Let's suppose there is a private investor. He has identified a particular drug after due research and development, and he has come up with this particular medicine or vaccine for a particular infection. So what happens? Let's say this is priced about 10,000 rupees. This is something huge. This cannot be afforded by the poor people. So what would happen? This has to be reduced to an amount, let's say about 500. So how do we reduce it? All the countries and their governments will pitch in on a common pool. Let's say this common pool has about 1 lakh in the kitty. This is just hypothetical numbers. So now what would happen is this private company will be asked to join this health impact fund. The minute they join, this 10,000, that is actually the cost price of that particular drug, will be reduced to about 500 rupees. So they would be able to recover their distribution cost. They would be able to recover the research and developmental cost, but they would not be able to recover the profits. In order to recover the profits, the money that is present in this kit will be used, and they will be rewarded to all those individual companies. So the profits for the private company will be provided by this money that has been contributed by the global community and its government. What are the advantages of this? This can be segmented into three parts. One for the patient, next for the government, and third is for the private individual. How is that the private individual or the company gets its advantages? One is that it need not have to worry about its profits. Why? It is the central pool which will be providing the profits, and these profits is on the basis of impact. Let's say there is a particular drug, and this particular drug has impacted large number of people, then some percentage that is present in this central pool will be given as profits to this private organization. How is it advantageous for the government? The government would be investing certain proportion of its GDP on this particular central pool. So it is reducing the amount of money that it is investing on the medical drugs for its own people by investing in this central pool. And for the patients, now the private individuals will be motivated to invest on the neglected diseases as well. So the number of diseases that the private individuals and R&D will be investing is comparatively more, and the drug will be comparatively cheaper as well. So these are the advantages for the private individuals, the government, as well as for the patients. Another advantage for the private organizations is that they would be able to sell their product or the medicine at exorbitant prices for all those countries who are not part of the central pooling. So if those countries which are not part of the central pooling, such countries cannot get the cheaper medicines. Another important factor is that this health impact fund will start rewarding the private individuals and organizations not for the sales but for the efficiency of the medicine. If they are able to create an impact with respect to that disease and it is serving large number of people, the rewarding for that particular year for that particular company starts increasing. So it is not the sales where they have a tie up with the company, tie up with the hospital, tie up with that particular doctor, but instead the number of people who have come outside this particular disease is what will be considered, and this is what is called as health impact and not the sales which is usually considered. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. So basically the health impact fund is about a center fund where government starts contributing and the profits for the private investments will be given from this fund on the basis of efficiency of the drug. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, ahead of vote for UNSC seat, India launches campaign brochure. What is this non-permanent United Nations security seat has been explained on 27 June 2019 under the first topic, 54 nations back India for UNSC non-permanent seat. Kindly look into this particular analysis to understand a clear picture of what this issue is all about. In the present scenario, India is in all likelihood set to take up its role as non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council for the year 2021 and 2022. As part of this, India is planning to introduce some of the key initiatives. What are those? One is about new opportunities with respect to the United Nations Security Council. It is planning to come up with a protocol with respect to how international terrorism has to be seen, reforming this multilateral system of United Nations Security Council and expanding the United Nations Security Council and promoting technology to find solutions to the issue of terrorism and multiple other things for international peace and security. For all this, India has come up with a brochure. So what would be the approach that India has taken? This is on the basis of 5S, and that is about Saman, which is respect, Samvad, which is about dialogue, Sahayog, cooperation, Shanti, to create conditions for universal, and Samriddhi, which is about the prosperity of all other countries. So what India seeks to achieve is establishment of norms. What is this norms? New orientation for a reformed multilateral system. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Kindly remember, go back on this day to understand the complete analysis. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about drones and its policy. The government of India under the Ministry of Civil Aviation has come up with the draft rules, and this is with respect to the unmanned aircraft rules of the year 2020. What does it include? It speaks about importing the drones, manufacturing the drones, and owning the drones for the uses. According to this particular analogy, let's say there is a person who is importing a drone, or there is a person who is manufacturing the drone in India, or he is using a drone for multiple purposes. All these people will have to take the approval from the Director General of Civil Aviation. The Director General of Civil Aviation also has all the powers to inspect that particular region wherever the manufacturing has been taking place. So only after it has looked into the manufacturing process, the company, and has looked into the legitimacy of this company, that is when licensing will be provided. Licenses will also have to be obtained for any kind of operations. For obtaining licenses, if it is an individual, that individual needs to be above 18 years of age, and in case they are business operators, they will have to be Indian nationals as well. Only for Indian nationals, and only if they are 18 years of age, that is when the permissions will be given according to the drone policy. So in the case of companies, the requirement is that main place of business has to be in India, they have to be operative in India, and chairman and at least two-thirds of the directors have to be Indian citizens. And in the present scenario, the article says that this particular rules will be put out in the public forum, and all the stakeholder approach and their feedback would be taken, and eventually permissions will also be given to multiple startups as well as those operating it, is what is the crux of this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about Payments Infrastructure Development Fund. This is an initiative that is taken by the Reserve Bank of India. What happens under this initiative? We all know about the point of sale machines. This requires the infrastructure where digital transactions can take place. This infrastructure is currently comparatively backward in tier 3 as well as tier 6 cities. What are these tier 3 and tier 6 cities? This include according to 2001 census, where populations is in the range of 20,000 to 50,000. Tier 4 includes 10,000 to 20,000. Tier 5 5,000 to 10,000, and Tier 6 cities include less than 5,000 population. So in all these cities there is need for digital transactions and infrastructure. To promote it, RBI has come up with Payments Infrastructure Development Fund. According to it, it will have an investment of about 500 crore, where initial amount will be contributed by RBI, and then the other half of 250 crores will be given by the card issuing banks, which means it can be SBI, it can be HDFC, and it can also include card networks operative, which is like Visa, and this can also include RuPay as well. So 250 crores will be invested by RBI. The other 250 crores will be invested by card issuing banks and card networks. So this pool of money will be used to build up the infrastructure in tier 3 to tier 6 cities. Why is this important? This will provide digitization of payment system and give impetus to infrastructure across the country. So this PIDF will be governed by an advisory council and managed and administered by the Reserve Bank of India. And deeper analysis of this will happen on our economy this week. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Consider the following statements. Disputes relating to the election of member of parliament falls under the original jurisdiction of Supreme Court. An election petition calling in question any election may be presented on one or more of the grounds by the candidate who contested the election only. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is none. Why? Because the disputes relating to the election of member of parliament falls directly under the High Court and it is not Supreme Court. And in the second scenario, the election petition can be filed by any elector as well as the one who has contested that election. So who is the elector here? An elector is a person who is present in that particular jurisdiction and who is able to vote in the elections. In case there is any corruption with respect to conduction of election and that elector senses that the result is not proper, he can file a petition with respect to High Court. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Kindly note, this petition can be filed in the High Court, so that is why the first option is wrong, and then any elector can file this petition in case he senses there is corruption included in it. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements with respect to the habeas corpus. The writ of habeas corpus can be issued against both public authorities as well as private individuals. Locus standi applies with respect to the habeas corpus. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is one only. Why? Habeas corpus petition does not require locus standi, which means that particular person alone need not have to file a case. Any other person who senses that freedom and liberty of another individual is violated, another person who is not directly related to that case can also file a petition of habeas corpus. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Why is locus standi not important? According to the Supreme Court, in Sheila Barse versus the state of Maharashtra, Supreme Court said if the detained person is not able to file a writ because of certain compulsions in the jail, any other person would be able to pay or file a writ on his behalf. So kindly note, it is not only the detained person who can file this particular petition, any other person can also file this petition. Now let's look into the next practice question. Gavi Alliance, recently seen in news, is related to space program by NASA and European agency to find life beyond Earth. Vaccines, it is related to vaccines and immunizations. Advanced robot developed by researchers in Google for supercomputing, a group of countries fighting climate change. So the Gavi Alliance is related to vaccines and immunizations. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Gavi here stands for Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. It is a global health partnership where both the public sector and the private sector step into this process, invest money so that they can provide immunization to all people. Basically, its activities include saving the children and protecting all those people in those poor countries who do not have access to the vaccines. So the money will be used for providing immunization to the poor people as well as for children. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Saidava kingdom, which of the following statement is or correct? They ruled the western Saurashtra. The capital was Bautambika, now called as Gumli. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is both. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Kindly note, Saurashtra temple city named as Gumli was the capital of Saidanva Empire, and these Saidanvas, who are also called as Jayadrathas, ruled the western Saurashtra. This article further speaks about Tamar Valley. This Tamar Valley is an archaeological landscape with many sites belonging to the Iron Age as well as Roman era. Also remember the place of Tamar Valley, which can be an important question for your preliminary examination. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements regarding Earth Hour. It is an initiative of UNMP and UNESCO. It is a movement in which participants switch off lights for 1 hour on a certain day in every year. Correct. It is a movement to raise awareness about climate change and need to save the planet. Correct. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is 2 and 3 only. Why? This is not an initiative of UNEP and UNESCO, but it is an initiative of the Worldwide Fund. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Medical journals should ensure scientific research and peer review to prevent systematic bias and errors in medical information analysis. Explain how the Health Impact Fund would give innovators the right incentives to develop an effective product. Please write all your answers on the comment section so that you guys can have a peer review and also come up with constructive criticism. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.